it becomes increasingly clear day by day that we are headed towards, if we are not already there, some kind of what I think can reasonably be called a dystopia. I don't think it's hyperbole to say this. And yes, it will be the dystopia that is developing and that is already even upon us. Yes, there are exceptions. There are asterisks to the dystopic texture of things. There are still remnants of the pre-dystopic mindset or era. But that doesn't change the fact that we are being taken into a dystopic era, an era that is dystopic in orientation. And I've commented before about what it's like. I talked about this a little bit in my interview with Hive Mentality about what it was like to write a dystopic book, a book that was set in a dystopic near future, such as The Insurrectionist, which I composed mostly in late 2020 and early 2021. What it was like to write a book about a dystopia when you are aware that dystopia really is, the walls are closing in many, many ways. And we are being taken out of a time in which one's rights, individual rights, and one's freedoms are taken for granted as constitutionally not just recommended, but constitutionally mandated, and that those rights cannot be infringed or besmirched. Those rights are inviolable. That mentality still exists among many people, but my impression is that it mostly exists in the United States of America. And where it exists in the United States of America, it mostly exists in certain regions of the United States of America. And I happen to be fortunate enough to live in one such region, i.e. the South, where there is still a strong "don't tread on me" kind of groundswell, and but even in regions like mine and other places in the United States, which have these which still have this countervailing spirit, we don't emerge entirely unscathed. When the world is, we're aware that the world is just shaping up into this tyrannical dystopian hellhole all around us. We may be dodging the bullet for now, and God willing for the future too. But even for us, even for those of us in safer regions of the country, and maybe there are other parts of the world where this is also the case. Before the last couple of years, I would have said places like Hungary and Poland were resisting the globalist dystopia. I don't know so much what's happening in those countries right now with regard to individual rights, with regard to the idea of one's bodily autonomy. Uh, I don't know, and there would be a way of finding out, uh, about the laws, which I'm not going to be, which I'm going to be circumlocucious about, because I'm recording this video for YouTube, and you cannot speak directly about certain things on YouTube. It is not a free speech zone, but anyway what I'm talking about when I say this. So even for those of us who are fortunate enough to live in places that are still saner than the rest of the world, we're not unscathed by the insanity, and it has a toll. It has a toll upon all of us. It's none of us are, to use a word, to coin a phrase, immune. Now, I might be. I mean, I'm speaking from my own perspective here, and when I might be overly dire in some ways, because I do have two children. I may say they're children. They're on the older side as children go. My daughter is 19. My son is 16. When I speak with them, I don't, I don't get the sense of they're really struggling to live in this world. That this world is so awful, and how, I don't get the feeling that they're preoccupied by those kinds of thoughts. So, just like when I was growing up as a teenager, I had my issues. I had my things that I struggled with. But perhaps somebody who was around my age at the time would have, would have maybe had more of a tendency to clutch his pearls. Metaphorically speaking, clutch his pearls, and say, "Oh, just for you to grow up in the shadow of, the Cold War, which might, the bomb might fall any day." And I was aware of that stuff. People talked about, the bomb falling. The bomb's going to fall. This is the music that will play when the bomb falls. What are you going to do when the bomb? People talked about, kids talked about, if there's a nuclear war, it's best to just run right under that missile and make sure it takes you out. I remember having conversations like that, because it would be so much worse if you survive, and then the radiation and all of that. And these are the conversations that people were having in the 80s. It's not really what people are saying today. People's concerns are different from that. But, I think maybe we need to give youth a bit more credit than we do as far as their resiliency. But that all being said, I just want to, I want to I feel that it's important to do a couple of things. The first is to try to take an almost dispassionate view. You can't be totally dispassionate when it's happening, when it's happening to you and to your world. You can't be completely dispassionate about it. It's not like you're just reading about it in some fantasy novel. But I think if you can look at things in a dispassionate way, that can be helpful. And I also want to, not. I see it as part of my purpose here, as to whatever extent, I am someone that anyone listens to or knows about. I don't have any delusions of grandeur about that. But I think that it's also important to to emphasize to be anti-black pill, to emphasize that if you say it's over, that is nonsense. When they say, there's nothing you can do about it, we're going to lose, that's defeatist crap, and it's not true. To point out, as I've tried to do before, many times before, the reasons to have hope and to keep on trucking and keep on fighting, because as I've said before, it's everything is dynamic in this life. Everything is dynamic. There's no, it's not like, like some obtuse philosophers like Hegel and Marx, talk about how everything will build to this point where then it'll be the end of history, and then everything will be static. Nothing will change. Well, nothing is ever static, and that's both for good and for ill. In a good age, there are elements. I mean, in a golden age, even at a time where things are generally really good, there are still negative elements that are always out about seeping into things and mitigating the goodness. And in a time like ours, where there's a lot, where things just feel very grim, there's still this dynamism that it's never going to go away. There's still, there's going to be a fight and a fight back and a punch and a counter punch, and that's human history. That's life as we know it in this world. Heaven is different, okay, and hell is different in the most horrible kind of way. But in this life, things are always in flux. And so in a time where things are grim, that's a reason to retain hope, or just, not hope in a stupid Pollyannic sort of way, but just to realize, there is by no means are the would-be controllers the kind of people who want to make this hell world. They've got a ton of opposition. They are up to their eyeballs in opposition right now. To say that they're just winning victories left and right, and soon we'll all be their slaves, and that'll be that. Well, that's just not true. Things don't work that way. Okay. But having said that, there's a lot of reason to be aware of the fact that we are in an age that is tending towards the dystopic right now. So let me just finish up my thoughts in this video with an observation. I spoke of how we want to be analytical. We want to try to understand how things got the way that they got. What were some of the things that pushed us in this direction? And the more I think about it, it really seems like 2015 and into 2016, that was the big turning point. That was when things turned really nasty. And that was when things turned really censorious. And that was when things became so that you could, there had been political correctness before that. There had been wokeness or SJW-ness or whatever, all of that stuff was going on, has been going on for a long time. But, since the 90s. But it was in 2015 that things turned really nasty. And it was around that time that people just began to hate with greater intensity. And I would say that Trump was an accelerant as far as this goes. I'm not saying that it's Trump's fault that things are the way that they are. I'm also not a Trump partisan. But I am aware that his manifestation, not just his manifestation, because he'd been around for years and years before who he was in 2015 became the Trump that everybody came to know. But the Trump of the 80s, the Trump of the 90s, was nothing like this divisive figure that he became in 2015 and 2016. And I can just recall things just getting really nasty at around that time, and just being aware. And Trump was the accelerant, but from my perspective, it's mostly been the people who hate him, who were whipped into this frenzy by him. They were also whipped into this frenzy against those who supported him, those who were in favor of him. And so it was bad enough when he was a viable candidate. It was bad enough when he won the Republican nomination, but then he actually won the presidency. And people just went absolutely ape shit and changed. They changed. They were transformed. They became something different. And I'm not saying that what they became is who they really are. And I'm not saying that when before that time that they were just pretending. I think who we are is a totality of how we behave in in response to various stimuli. But whether it was a planned thing or not, and I don't know. I don't know whether the Trump phenomenon just came willy-nilly, and or if it was if all the while he's just been controlled opposition in truth. I don't know which is the case, but I do know that things just got uglier around the time that he came on the scene. And they've only become worse, year by year, as things have, as things have fallen out since then, since 2015. Now, I know that for some, 2012 was a watershed year. That was supposed to be the year when the world was supposed to end, according to the Mayan calendar, according to some readings of the Mayan calendar. And some people think that the world actually did end because things got really bizarre afterwards, and now we're living in the Matrix. I have heard people, say this, assert these kinds of things. Do I believe that? No, I don't personally believe that, but it's not. I mean, I understand why one might see things that way. But I it was around that time that you watch, and I've made this point before. You watch a television program that's pre-2012, And, you see that people are actually making jokes about things that they would never make jokes about now on a television program. And so there's this like censoriousness that really that maybe started to come into effect in 2012, 2013, 2014, but really started to solidify in 2015. That was when the tyrannical impulse, the proclivity to want to shut people up, and to say, well, freedom of speech, screw that, screw your freedoms, to quote Arnold Schwarzenegger. Where that became, where it was just like, well, freedom of speech, yeah, blah blah blah. People actually taking that kind of perspective on it. Let me tell you, in the 80s, definitely in the 80s, you never heard anybody who was liberal, say anything bad about freedom of speech. Freedom of speech was always good in the 70s and in the 80s. No one on the left ever dissed freedom of speech. Into the 90s, it changed a little in the 90s, but not with the intensity that things have become now. And I still remember a couple of things which I'll share. I remember, I'm old enough to remember 2000 Bush versus Gore, and how at the time that seemed like, whoa, this is just a cataclysmic battle between two very different visions of America. And, could things possibly get any more divided, any more divisive than they are now? This is what people like me and others were thinking in the year 2000. We had no idea, and I think that, to his credit, Pat Buchanan wrote an article around that time period who said, and somewhere in the article he wrote, if you think things are bad now, you ain't seen nothing yet. And boy, was he ever right. Boy, was he right about that. So everything that's going on right now with the so-called pandemic, and all the twists and turns that they're taking with it, and with the Baj, which I will not, again, I will only call it the Baj here, but you know what I'm talking about. Baj spelled backwards, and that seems to be the end game of the so-called pandemic. But it really all didn't start with that. It didn't, things were grim before March of 2020.